Yeah. So, hi Parvati, welcome to Clinical Conversation Podcast. So, basically, here what we do is we give an opportunity to anyone and everyone who wants to enter into clinical research or who wants to understand what clinical research is all about. And people have a lot of questions, but they do not have a platform where they could discuss. So that is
Yeah.
what we provide, and to professionals and students. So this is an open podcast, okay? So please feel free and relax, okay? Whatever questions you have, we can discuss it out, okay? So we'll just request you to at least start introducing yourself so that we know your background.
So I have a background. I did my master's in analytical chemistry here in Bangalore at St. Joseph's, and after which I went to UK to do master's in neuroscience. And after that, I worked in a biotech company for almost 2 years as a research assistant in the field of NGS, next generation sequencing and RT-qPCR, a lot of molecular diagnostic panels, designing, optimizing, and verifying all of those cancer diagnostic panels, mainly in oncology. So that is my background. And right now, I am looking for a job. I want to get into clinical research. I I have worked in a lot of I have done a lot of preclinical work, and while we do that, we do it with reference samples. A lot of the verification and validation we do on reference samples, and then when we come into, it's very difficult to get patient samples to work on in the first place, which has enough deletions and everything so that we can detect with our own kit. We were using hybrid capture method for NGS to detect CNVs and structural variants, and mainly for CNVs as well. So for me, that really opened up my eyes into how inefficient sometimes
Yeah.
preclinical research can be. We will do all that hard work for months and months, and then we will finally do it on a few patient samples, and then the results are just, it's heartbreaking. And then we have to start all over again and optimize and probes and everything. It's very expensive also.
Yeah.
So that's when I started looking into clinical research, in not just in companies, even in academic settings. I want to get into clinical research even as a scientist in academia or in pharma or by in from what I have talked to people, I because I don't have a clinical research background, I they have asked, I got advice saying that maybe you should look into CROs, but I don't know many, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's very overwhelming sometimes. So yeah, that is my background and my interest, sort of.
Yeah. So basically, you have a good background over how the research works, basically, fundamentally. And you have also done actual research, which is preclinical. So when it comes to clinical research, as you know that now, along the journey of the molecule, along the drug development process, so essentially, from the preclinical phase, what we determine is that your drug or your molecule is efficacious. Okay. And now you want to test that particular thing on humans so that we can determine the
Yeah.
specific efficacy not only on the animals microorganism, but now we are moving into human territory. Okay, so
Yeah.
clinical research moves into that, and as you know that there are four major phases of clinical research: phase one, phase two, phase three, and phase four, and the sample
Yeah.
size goes on increasing. So, when it comes to clinical research, so if I understand your perspective correctly, you want to perform hands-on clinical research. Okay, so there is two types of clinical research that they conduct in India. One is the part which you are looking for, where you want to hands-on work on a molecule or a product, right? For example, I mean, as I understand your background, you were working on laboratory test panels. Okay, so
Yeah.
some clinical research basically in India is run by either the CROs, where the pharmaceutical company would liaise the responsibility for the CROs to conduct the clinical trial over multiple hospitals in India.
Yeah.
Next thing is the clinical research initiated by academia, where they conduct clinical trial. Basically, these are doctors at various reputed hospitals such as AIMS and others, where they test a particular type of medicine or a treatment there. So here you have to understand what kind of research do you want to do, because if you want to work on your own idea, so it is always a good idea to start with academia, because there you'll have the freedom to pursue your idea. When it comes to the clinical research with the CROs conduct, so essentially what they do is the sponsor has their own molecule which they want to test on various patients, and they give the responsibility to the CROs. Okay, so when you go to the CROs, either as a clinical research associate or a clinical research coordinator, you're essentially working on their protocol. So it
Yeah.
essentially depends upon what is your framework. Do you want to conduct your own research in the form of clinical research, or do you want to work on some other molecules and understand how the clinical research is performed, how the protocols are followed, and how the regulatory framework works? So in that context, what
Yeah.
do you want to do?
I mean, right. I would like to get into CROs and test because I
Okay.
have read of a few. I have been following a few people, and I like what they are doing. And I would, because right now I don't have any ideas about what I can do in academia, so I would rather get into a project which is already set out, and maybe I can get hands-on experience on that. So
Great.
yeah.
So a CRO would be a very good place to start, because they do have industry standard working procedures and protocols set in place. So you would get a better
Mhm.
exposure, hands-on exposure, and a proper training to go with that. But whenever you want to get into a CRO, what they primarily require is your understanding of fundamentals of clinical research. Okay, for example, various phases of clinical trial, the Indian regulatory, the ethics committee, how does that work? How does the clinical trial protocol work? Basically, so understanding of clinical research is a prerequisite there, because once you understand clinical research, they do not spend their time or efforts on those fundamental concepts. They expect you to have that, and then based on the study or the protocol, they will give you protocol specific training. So for that particular thing in India, it is a very education is a very big market. Okay, they have commercialized everything, and if you want to learn clinical research, it ranges from 20,000 to 1 lakh also. Okay, there are certification courses in clinical research, there are diplomas, and there is also a master's program in clinical research. But being someone who has been for more than 7 years in clinical research, I would honestly tell you that going for a diploma or a master's would not be that effective unless it is adding value to your skill set. So I would always recommend to have a certification in clinical research so that it can establish your bona fides, your skills, and there you need to have proper understanding. For example, in a lot of clinical research interviews, they do ask you the NDCT guidelines of 2019, or they ask you to differentiate between various phases of clinical trial, or ask about the informed consent process. Okay, so that particular understanding needs to be very clear. And as far as your question that how do you transition into clinical research? So the transition involves an understanding of clinical research. How does clinical research work? What are the various rules, aspects, various stakeholders? Followed, I'm sorry, I think. So yeah, so that is one of the aspect. So I would always recommend that you go for a certification and understand the basics of it. And at the end of it, it is your interview performance. How do you give that? Okay, so I've seen a lot of people who have a very good understanding of clinical research, but they're not able to, how do I say, apply those particular skill set when it comes to interview. Okay. So that is why a lot of people are discouraged from CROs, because CROs require a certain level of understanding in their candidates, because these candidates would be essentially working for the big pharmas, and there your understanding of clinical research is critical. Okay, so that is about it. And so in that context, uh, I've also started to help a student by my YouTube channel. That was the first thing. Second thing is I understood that not a lot of people have a lot of resources, okay? And to pay for expensive courses which are unnecessarily hype, that doesn't make any sense. So I've also designed some courses which are under 500 rupees, which gives you a basic idea of clinical research. And once you understand those particular concepts, you can go and apply for this particular interviews. Now, again, when it comes to clinical research, there are three major areas. One is the clinical research operations, one is the clinical data management, and one is the pharmacovigilance arm. So, which particular sector are you interested in?
Can you briefly tell me what is the difference? Because this is the first time
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
hearing this.
No, no, I understand. So, basically, clinical research operations involves clinical trials, which essentially you conduct and you monitor. Okay, so that is the operational part of it. Clinical data management comes at a later stage where the data is generated from the clinical trials, and that data is properly managed, that data is queried, that data is cleaned. Okay, so that is the role of clinical data management essentially to handle the clinical trial data, what is generated, because that is essentially the goal of a clinical trial to generate all the safety and efficacy data so that they can submit it to the regulatory authority. Next, the other part is the pharmacovigilance, where whatever the
Mm.
safety events are in that particular clinical trial, so the safety events are properly assessed. Okay, so that is pharmacovigilance, where the drug safety is of the paramount, and whatever the adverse events are, which generally public refer as side effects. Okay, so they essentially focus on that, where the risk to benefit ratio is very well assessed. And when it comes to phase 4 clinical trial, there the drug is already out there, and now we have to monitor the safety of it. So it doesn't mean that the drug is approved by the government, it is going to stay in the market. The drug has to constantly demonstrate its safety as well as the efficacy. So it depends
Okay.
upon what kind of setup do you want to work in. Because in clinical trial operations, if you're working as a CRA, you need to visit the hospitals. You are eyes and ears of the sponsor, where you essentially understand how the trial is being conducted, you monitor their progress, you identify if there are any mishaps, if there are any protocol deviations, if there are any adverse events, how it is reported. So you get a very hands-on experience of that. So that is the role of a clinical research associate. But if you want to get a proper understanding of clinical research, I would always recommend to start at the clinical research coordinator position, which is the CRC position. So as a CRC, it is your responsibility to conduct the clinical trial, where you also get to interact with the subjects. You also get to work at the site, have an oversight over blood sampling, have IP dispensation, have an insight over how this particular medication is interacting with the subject. So if you want to start learning clinical research right from the scratch, I would recommend you to go for a CRC position. But the caveat to that is that particular position is underpaid in India. Okay, so as low as 10 to 15,000. But when it comes to CRA position, that position starts from 40,000, 50,000, and it can go over a lakh. Okay, so you essentially have to prioritize your financial responsibilities as well as your learning targets. Because when I started my career as a clinical research coordinator, also 6, 7 years back, I was earning well, but I had very good advices from people who were in clinical research to start with a CRC position. So I did that for a year to understand how the trials are conducted. Okay, so I got a very well hands-on experience of the trial conduct, and then I moved on to the CRA role from the CROs. So essentially, if you want to
Okay.
get into CROs, either you need to have a very, very good skill set and understanding of clinical research, but 50% of the CROs, what they'll do is they'll always ask you prior experience of clinical research as a clinical research coordinator or a clinical trial associate. So, depending upon your understanding, your experience, the CROs would hire you.
So, what from my skill set, what can I point out as a transferable? Because I don't have an experience in clinical research. When I when I'm applying for it, obviously I'll have to tailor my CV according to a
Correct, correct.
clinical research field. So I mean, so how do I present myself so that because I
So
don't have any clinical research experience.
yes, yes. So I would recommend you to start step by step. First, gain a certification in clinical research. Okay. If you want, I can share you some of my certification, which can give you a very good idea about clinical research, so that you can get the clinical research understanding and skill set. Second thing is you can even I have posted a video about how to tailor your CV according to the clinical research industry.
Okay.
Second is a target position such as clinical trial associate or a clinical research associate position. Okay, so a clinical trial associate is a position which is good for freshers and experienced people alike. But for a clinical trial associate position, you need to have a very, very good understanding of clinical research. But for a CRA position, that is clinical research associate, there you need some kind of experience. Some people do hire fresher CRAs, but 90% of them would prefer someone with experience. So I would recommend you to start with the CTA positions, clinical trial associate
Yeah.
positions. And that particular position is a stepping stone into the CRO world, and that is also a starting position for a CRA. Okay, so if you are a good as a if you are a good professional as a CTA, you definitely get promoted to CRA position very quickly. Okay,
Okay.
so considering your background, your understanding which you have, and definitely it will be a valuable skill set as a CRA. So I would recommend you to target the CTA positions, clinical trial associate position at the global CROs, and then move on to the CRA position so that you can
Okay.
get into clinical research scene as well as grow from there on.
So I have been also applying abroad for a lot of positions, like countries like Germany and UK. So what do you think about that? Do you think the market is
See,
decent enough?
the market is decent. See, I'll tell you very, very honestly, in clinical research industry, still it is a very, very fast growing industry. But the caveat to here is that people might have a very good clinical research CV, but when it comes to understanding of clinical research, when it comes to demonstrating your skill set, that is where 90% of the people fail. Because even I conduct some of the interviews, and I've seen people with a year or two of experience. When I ask them what is the difference between phase one and phase three of the clinical trial, or if you're applying for example, for Indian position, if I ask them that what was the latest amendment in ICH-GCP, ICH-GCP are the global good clinical practices guideline. So the latest version is E6R3, which was published in January of 2025. So if I ask you what are the five major updates that you can tell me, so that answer defines that how aware are you of the industry? Are you aware of the updates and what is your understanding of it? So, depending upon your interview performance, a lot of candidate get screened out. So, you can make a very good CV, but I would always recommend you to prepare the best for the interview because once you get through the interview, there are excellent training modules offered by the global CROs. Okay, so you'll get to learn a lot. But that interview is the hurdle, and that is what puts people off because in clinical research, there is no hand holding at the CROs level. They require people who have a good understanding and who can be robust with the training also. So it is always a good idea to have very clear concepts of clinical research, and then you can
Yeah.
go on to understand the protocols. Okay. Also, one of the critical areas in clinical research is the informed consent process because as we are going to conduct the clinical trials on humans, consenting becomes very important. And that particular process has their roots in Declaration of Helsinki. So if you have no
Mm.
idea of Declaration of Helsinki or the infamous Nazi doctor trials, then you are not the person to conduct clinical trial because you don't understand the legacy of it and the impact that has from 1945 to 2025. Okay. So that is the thing. The clinical research market is awesome. Even in the countries like UK, Germany, I have some friends, they are constantly looking for good clinical trial associate, good CRCs. But what they don't get is people either expect a lot of training or people who want a desk-based remote job. Because when it comes to clinical research, you will have to travel a lot for a CRA position. For a CTA position, it involves a lot of multitasking because you are going to support the CRAs with a lot of side data, submissions, and etc. So depends upon what your mentality is. If you want to learn, if you want to grow, it is a very good industry, very fast job, very well paid also, but for the right candidates. So that is the caveat. So how is your understanding and are you willing to match the pace?
Okay. So basically, I have to have a really basic, good understanding of how everything is done. Even if I don't have a clinical research background, I need to understand the field.
Correct.
Okay. But how, so my CV will have to be shortlisted for the interview in any case.
Yes. So for that, you need to generate ATS optimized CV, which even I've posted a video on YouTube also. You can refer
Yeah.
to that. I can share you the template also. So you can do that. But I was always recommend that getting your CV shortlisted is one thing, but uh, preparing for that. So that preparation is very, very critical because once you get into
Yes.
that, you will find all kinds of opportunity, but that one last hurdle creates a very big barrier between good candidates and the candidates who get into the clinical research industry. Because I've seen candidate who just get into the CRO, then they go on growing. Okay, there's no stopping then. But I've seen people with a lot of hurdles because they would understand the operational part of it. But why do we do a particular thing? They would tell me everything about informed consent. But if I ask them that, for example, if you are someone who is going to participate in a clinical trial, or if your father or mother is going to participate, then do you think that they should participate, or what are your thoughts on it? A lot of people just take it on the face value and they say, no, trial are experiments and I can't go with that. There are all the risk involved. But if you are a clinical researcher, or if you understand the concepts of clinical research, there are various safeguards involved, right from the ethics committee, the sponsors, and everyone. So you need to have that broader scope and understanding.
So if you were interviewing me and I have no clinical research experience, but you are only asking for, and you know that,
Yeah,
and you are asking me an interview question, you would be asking from the fundamentals basically,
yeah,
and these hypothetical situations probably,
correct.
right? Okay.
So
I wanted to ask you one more question. For, okay. So you were saying, sorry.
yeah, no. So what I was saying is that basically, if I know you do not have any experience in clinical research, I would always focus on your fundamental understanding of clinical research because I can work with that. Okay, I can give you experience, but if you do not have the understanding, then that is a problem for me. So do not worry about your
Okay.
experience. Focus on your fundamentals because when I started my clinical research, I only had 8 months of CRC experience. But someone gave me a chance, not because of my experience, but he said that it is because of your understanding of clinical research. Understanding cannot be taught. Where the experience and operational part, they can easily teach you. So I would recommend you
Okay.
to pursue the courses, read through the guidelines. So for example, if you're applying for a position based in Germany, then what is the regulatory authority of Germany? Okay, what are the laws of it? Not into deeply, but what are the latest amendments? What is the significant changes? For example, if I have to apply for a clinical trial in Germany, what is the approval timeline? Okay. Basics such as what is adverse event, what is serious adverse events. So I've designed a very, very good course. You can go. I'm not promoting it, but I've included all the modules which are asked in the interview itself. So it will essentially help you prepare for the interview. If you seriously pursue those things, then there is nothing that is stopping you. Again, for the good clinical practices, GCP, there is a certification available for free, which is at ich.org. So there you can get your good clinical practices certificate. Okay. There also you will get a very good understanding of it.
So sorry, can you repeat the name of the website?
Uh,
ICH.
you can type ICH GCP certification and the first website shall help you. So that's not a problem. Even how to pursue that certification, I have posted a video on YouTube. So you can also refer
Yes,
to the
I have to
channel
still
and
watch it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
essentially, this particular
Sorry, it
field
is the
is, yeah. No, go ahead.
sorry.
No, no, go
Sorry,
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
It is the Udemy course that you have sent me, right? I
Yeah.
had a look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there
Okay.
I've tried to cover all of the basis of clinical research so that it enables you to appear at the interview. Okay, so once you
Mhm.
understand all the basics of it, it will give you a very decent idea of clinical research. And if you're good with all the concepts, then there is no stopping you from entering into a position because they would be
Okay.
rejecting you only if they require experience is a must, but not because of your understanding. Okay. So I would recommend you to go through the ICH-GCP principles, guidelines, the history of clinical research. Okay, so go through that course once before your interview, and you're good to go. Even on the YouTube channel, I've posted a lot of interview questions for past 3 years, so you can go through that also. It helps you.
So I have, so somebody did tell me that I can start at the assistant level. Is that the same as clinical
CTA.
trial
Yes, yes.
associate?
Yes. So that is
Yeah,
clinical
okay.
trial assistant or clinical trial associate. So they are
So they are the same role.
same roles, same roles. Sometimes in clinical research, we have a lot of, different terminologies. Okay. So sometimes they might say clinical trial assistant or clinical trial associate. So that is the one and the
Mm,
same role. And that is a good starting
okay.
point, for you to enter, as per my
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay. So this might be a stupid question. This ICH GCP,
Yeah.
is it like is it constant everywhere, the guidelines, or does it differ in areas like in India it is different
No.
or somewhere else it is different?
No. I see GCP are non-negotiable. There are the gold standard of good clinical practices. So if you want to conduct a clinical trial and if you want to conduct it as per the global levels, 100% of the clinical trial across the world follow the ICGCP guidelines because
Okay.
major pharma players, major countries, they came together and formed this organization. And they sat together and decided which guidelines we need to follow across the world. So
Okay.
there are 7 to 8 various guidelines starting from E1 to E6. So if you have that much amount of time, you can go through all the guidelines, but I would recommend you can read the E6 guidelines, which are related to clinical research. Okay, good clinical
Yeah.
practices. So once you read the E6 part of it and E6 R3 in particular, you would get a very good understanding how the clinical trials are conducted across the globe. So I see
Okay.
GCP guidelines are non-negotiable, that they have to be understood and followed.
Okay. Yeah, those are my questions because this is
Yeah,
such a new field for me. And I have always worked in labs, in
correct.
basically research labs, and never gotten into clinical. And I've always been very curious about it, but I did not know there were so many guidelines. Obviously, there is, which is good. And I never, because I'm applying for jobs right now, and I have been applying for a lot of molecular biologist roles in labs, and and it is a bit saturated field right now. A lot of biologists are out there.
Mm.
um, and clinical research, I recently got into it, but I have no direction where I'm applying to it, but I'm getting rejected probably because I don't know the guidelines and stuff. Yeah.
Correct. So, I would recommend that, first of all, have a very good understanding of clinical research. Tailor your CV according to it. Tailor your LinkedIn according to it, because a lot of recruiters, they scan your CV, they look at your LinkedIn, they look at your activities, so that they get a brief idea whether this person is interested or inclined towards clinical research, and based on that, they filter out the serious candidates. Because as you know, that a lot of people are applying for a lot of jobs. Not everyone is suitable for it. And as a recruiter, it gets very difficult to filter out all those people out
Hmm.
and select the serious candidates. So that is the thing,
Okay.
that you need to be very excellent at the interviews, and you need to tailor your profile according to it. And once you have a very good
Okay.
understanding, then there's no stopping you. And clinical research as a field, as a career, there are tremendous opportunities. Okay, money is not a problem, opportunity is not a problem, just the quality of the candidate. So you have a very good background, your master's in neuroscience, and you have a global exposure also. So you would be successful in this particular field. And in this field,
um,
I would say this is one of the field where it is not about how much experience, years of experience you have, but what kind of skill set you have. because I transitioned from one position to another in accelerated time frame just because I had those particular understanding and I asked for those responsibilities. So if you have the
Yeah.
potential, not necessarily you are going to be CTA for a year. They can even accelerate you as a CRA because of your understanding and everything. So I would recommend that have a very good preparation and understanding of this particular field, and then sky is the limit. Okay, you can be very, very successful.
That's good to hear because I have only been started applying for the last 2 months, and I have applying to a lot of things. And I think I should maybe focus on one thing and apply to one thing.
Exactly.
Um, and one thing that I hear a lot is networking, a lot. So, how important is networking in getting into a clinical research position?
Uh, Importance of networking, I wouldn't deny. Networking is important, but not as critical as that if you don't have a good network, you're not getting into it. See, at the end of the day, you have to be visible somewhere. Okay, visibility is important. And visibility
Mm,
essentially comes from networking. And a lot of
yeah.
times, the strategy is, for example, if you go into even LinkedIn for a particular position, and for example, that position is with IQVIA. Okay. So if you have a good network or good contact at IQVIA, they can refer you internally. Okay, so that is where
Yeah.
networking comes in. So if you have a good rapport with them and if you have the job ID, you can request them through networking that this is the position I'm targeting with. These are my skill set, and could you refer me? So
Yeah.
that essentially works because a lot of companies go through the referral process also to filter out the candidates. And if an employee is saying that this particular person has a good skill set, then it is more believable than the recruiter himself because the recruiter has a lot of layers. Okay, so that is the one thing.
Mm,
Networking is
mm,
one thing, but I wouldn't say it is the only thing. Okay, so you can
yeah.
go on building networking, and even if you network with a lot of people, some people have very, very good posts which explain various aspects of clinical research or some experience they've had at their site and what are the learnings out of it.
Yeah.
For example, if I
Yeah.
have a protocol deviation which I want other people to understand and know, then if you have that particular network and if it shows on your feed and if you go through that post, you will get a understanding, a different perspective out of it. So I would recommend that network for the sake of connecting with the community, but it is not the end. But you need to have your
Yeah. Okay.
visibility. Okay, so tailor your
Visibility.
profile according to it, your CV according to it, because from various job portals they download your CV, but LinkedIn essentially has been the primary go-to where they just enter a bunch of keywords and then the CVs are the candidates are shortlisted. And if your CV is up to date
Okay.
and attached to it, it is easier for them to download. So essentially, you
Okay.
have to think as a recruiter that how can I find the right candidates with least amount of efforts. So essentially,
Okay.
you'll have to take some efforts to make your profile visible so that they can reach out to you. That's it.
Okay. Okay. I have one more question. What would be the sites other than LinkedIn that you would go on to look for CRA jobs or
Uh,
CTC
uh,
jobs?
See, first of all, than LinkedIn, I would recommend you to take a list of top 10 CROs, okay, in India or whatever countries you're targeting. Okay, I've also made a video on that. So depending upon that, you can select the top 10 CROs. Okay, then you can directly go on their website and apply there because that is the primary source which they consider before LinkedIn. Okay, so I would
Yeah.
recommend you to have those particular website, the career section, and keep checking that on a daily basis or however the frequency you like. Secondary would be LinkedIn, and third would be Glassdoor or Indeed and Naukri. These three platform have received a good response. So
Okay.
the company portals primary, then LinkedIn, and then the job portals.
That's it. Thank you very
Yeah,
much. This has been so helpful. I
yeah,
did not know how much because I'm moving from preclinical to clinical, there's a lot of knowledge gap that I have, which I need to fill, I think.
correct, correct.
So yeah, yeah, I'll work on that.
Yeah, always happy to help, and thank you for reaching out. So this
Thank
essentially
you.
that is what I think, because this is a growing community and there is a lot of lack of understanding in the procedures and how to approach it and everything. And it is the responsibility of experienced people to at least let freshers or the newer people know how the industry works and then
Yeah.
take them in, because essentially they are the one who are going to lead this field forward. Okay, so it is always a good
Yeah.
idea to guide people and help them.
That is very, very kind of you, actually, because I was not expecting this and I was so lost. There was just because there's so much resources out there because, internet, it's very overwhelming. And I
Correct.
kind of stopped looking for clinical research positions because I was so overwhelmed by so many information. But I hope I can stay connected with you if I find a role,
Definitely.
if you,
Definitely,
yes.
definitely. Happy to help.
Thank you so much. It
Sure.
was so nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.
Bye.